The Islamic Golden Age, which began in the 8th century, was a period of Islamic prosperity, intellectual advancement, and a renewed emphasis on the lands of the Middle East. During this time, Baghdad emerged as the epicenter of the Golden Age, renowned for its global learning and progress. With a population of 1 million, the city boasted numerous libraries filled with manuscripts and books eagerly awaiting study by scholars from around the world who flocked to the Muslim capital. A must-see destination for these visitors was the Beit al-Hikmah, also known as the House of Wisdom, which was the largest library in the city and a significant catalyst for advancements in art, literature, astronomy, medicine, and more. During this golden age, the rulers of Baghdad, the Abbasid Caliphate, sponsored scholars, scientists, and other intellectuals who wished to come to the city for study. It appeared that progress was inevitable. However, as they say, all good things must come to an end. In its final years of glory, Baghdad served as the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, the third Islamic caliphate to rule the Middle East since the time of the Prophet Muhammad. They came to power after defeating the Umayyad Caliphate in the mid-8th century. The name Abbasid was derived from an uncle of the Prophet named Abbas, and the empire rapidly expanded to encompass territories from Arabia to the Levant and Syria, North Africa, Iraq, and beyond. The Abbasids were a powerful force to be reckoned with, but when the Mongols invaded, they faced an unexpected challenge. The Mongols were very different from the Abbasids. They were a nomadic, pastoral people who rarely settled down and frequently clashed with settled societies such as the Abbasid Caliphate. In these conflicts, the Mongols were known for a particularly unique and brutal battle strategy. They were notorious for their terror tactics, and if one heard clashing pots and pans or aggressive rattling of bells, it was assumed that they were about to become the next Mongol victim. Although they usually offered the option of surrender to local rulers before launching an attack, if this offer was declined, mass destruction and bloodshed were likely to follow. Their reputation was so fearsome that they inspired the construction of the Great Wall of China. Despite being nomadic, the Mongols were known for their territorial conquests, which provided more room for their wandering people. When Temujin united the Mongols and took on the name Genghis Khan, it set off a chain of events that would ultimately result in the destruction of Baghdad. Under the leadership of Genghis Khan's grandson, Hulagu, the Mongol Empire continued to expand. Hulagu Khan conquered Syria and was working to solidify his control over the lands of the Ilkhanate of Persia. This brought the Mongols into direct conflict with the Shurite sect known as the Assassins, which Hulagu eventually defeated. However, his next challenge was the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad. Over time, the Abbasids had become increasingly weakened politically and militarily. They had even been paying tribute to the Mongols, but the current caliph, Al-Mustasim, was not too concerned about the potential threat. Despite hearing rumors about Hulagu's intentions, Al-Mustasim was not convinced of the imminent danger, in part due to advice from his Grand Vizier. The issue with the Grand Vizier was that he had his own conflicting agenda that opposed the caliph's. It is believed that the caliph's Grand Vizier welcomed the idea of a Mongol invasion due to the caliph's previous decrees that had offended many of his Shia Muslim subjects, including the Grand Vizier. However, the truth of the Grand Vizier's intentions is still a matter of debate. What is certain is that the caliph underestimated the power and determination of the Mongols. Al-Mustasim should have realized Hulagu's seriousness when he received a letter demanding his and Baghdad's surrender. To everyone's shock, the caliph responded with an ultimatum: either leave the city alone or lay siege to it. The caliph believed that the entire Muslim world would come together to defend Baghdad if the Mongols dared to attack the Abbasid capital. At the time, the caliph was under the impression that the entire Muslim world would unite to protect Baghdad in case of a Mongol invasion. However, this was not the case, and on January 29, 1258, the Mongols began their siege of the city. The Abbasid army was ill-equipped and weak, and the rest of the Muslim world was largely indifferent. The Mongols, on the other hand, were a formidable force, and it only took a few days for the caliph to realize that he had misjudged the situation. He attempted to negotiate with Hulagu, but the Mongol Khan refused. The Mongols offered to let the caliph surrender peacefully, but it was a one-time offer that had already expired. The siege continued, and on February 10, 1258, Caliph al-Mustasim surrendered unconditionally. The Mongols accepted his surrender, but for the next 3 days, nothing happened. The citizens of Baghdad waited anxiously, but they had no idea what horrors awaited them. On February 13, in a display of overwhelming force, Hulagu and his troops finally breached the walls of Baghdad. The Mongols had only given a warning to the Nestorian Christians, instructing them to lock themselves in their church and not to come out. This was likely due to Hulagu's own mother and favorite wife being Nestorian Christians. For the rest of the city, there was no such mercy. What followed was a week of indiscriminate pillage, looting, and bloodshed. Not even the nobles of the city were spared. It is estimated that around 3,000 were executed. As for the caliph, there are various theories as to his fate. One story suggests that al-Mustasim was imprisoned in a room filled with his own treasures, and according to the travels of Marco Polo, Hulagu is said to have taunted the caliph by saying, "Eat of thy treasure as much as thou wilt, since thou art so fond of it." Al-Mustasim was the last ruler of the Islamic Golden Age and its capital, Baghdad. In 1258, the city was besieged by the Mongol Empire, led by Hulagu Khan. The siege resulted in the fall of the Abbasid Caliphate and the destruction of the city. The death toll of the entire catastrophe has been estimated to range from 90,000 to 1 million, including the army that defended the city and civilian men, women, and children. There are two tales of how al-Mustasim met his end. The first suggests that he died of starvation, while the second claims that Hulagu had him rolled in one of his own expensive rugs and trampled to death to avoid spilling royal blood on Baghdad soil. Regardless of the cause, the city was nearly leveled and what was left was set ablaze and burnt to a crisp. Eyewitnesses reported that the Tigris River ran red with blood from the massacre until the conquerors began throwing hundreds of thousands of books and manuscripts into the water. The Tigris then turned black from the ink of the priceless texts that would be read no more. The loss of the House of Wisdom and its valuable contents, following the siege and destruction of Baghdad in 1258, was a tragedy that reverberated far beyond the Abbasids and the Muslim world. It was a calamity for the whole world, marking the end of a golden age of prosperity, knowledge, art, and more. Countless texts that could have been studied and appreciated were lost forever. Centuries of progress and learning that might have been were cut short. The fall of Baghdad was not only the fall of a city, but also the fall of a hub that was at the center of a growing world. For many around the globe, it was a destination for those willing to trek for days on end to study at the House of Wisdom. The destruction of Baghdad marked the end of a life that is sadly forgotten by too many of us today.